What is up, guys? You got NotTheWorst here, bringing another Black Desert online video, and today we're taking a look at a little sneak peek of the Drakania Awakening skills. We have these up on BDO Codex. Looks like they've been data mined already, so we have a little bit of a early preview on these skills. So we're going to take a look at them. I skimmed through a few. I didn't really dig into it. Wanted to save that for when we did it on the video, so maybe we all get a little surprised as we go through these skills. I'll link to this in the description if you want to check it out for yourself. Of course, it's just BDO Codex. Go into the skill builder, and then you can head on over to Drakania, and it's got the Awakening setup in there. And then just lastly, to keep in mind with this can change. We'll have to see on launch. We saw this with Succession Drakania as well. It was released on Global Labs, and a lot of the skills were changed and tweaked before release, and then even after release they were modified later. So if you're viewing this video, after release and it's a little bit different than what we're looking at, don't be too surprised. So let's go ahead and take a look at what we got. First up, we have essentially their e-buff in Awakening. It actually does different things in the Hexblood or Dragon Blood, I guess we'll call them a stance, that you go with, but you're going to get crit rate, critical hit damage plus 15, and movement speed plus 20%. It is a super armor while using the e-buff, as is pretty standard for those. And then the extra effect, depending on which, I guess it's called Legacy then, Hexblood or Dragon Blood Trend, it'll be a super armor for 3 seconds if you're in Hexblood, or a 5% recovery in Dragon Blood form. It's kind of interesting. Here's the big one that everybody's been asking about and wondering, what's going to happen. Does she have a grab? The answer is yes. She does indeed have a grab for it with the 10% accuracy rate modifier. It's actually pretty solid damage for a grab. Just put on it itself, and it looks like you have a secondary follow-up hit LMB when you have that grab on there. It is a float on it, not a KD, just to be noteworthy there. So yes, Drakania Awakening does indeed have a grab. Here's our Legacy setup. This is E to transition into each of the forms, and it appears it's an actual skill that does that. It's a forward guard that's on it too to swap between the two. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of combos and things that rely on switching this back and forth, but time will tell as far as like how this is going to work, setting different things up. We've got just Trion training, standard attack here, nothing out of the ordinary. Some floating on it, unprotected. Damage is nothing to really talk about. Pretty straightforward skill there. We've got Fate Beckons. This is a WF and then RMB during forward jump, Markethan's Wings, or Dragonflight to perform a charge attack with this. It's a super armor. It's got knockback in PvE only. Does have a 35% crit rate. You'll notice her skills are not 100% crit rate, but they all do have some pretty decent crit modifiers between like 20 to 50% on most of these, and notably they're not PvE only, so this should be in PvP. I know a lot of classes have either 100% crit rate on specific skills, and then others have like 50% crit rate in PvE or something like that. That's not the case, at least not from what we're seeing here. Dragonflight, this is that that very, very far dash that we saw in the video, the trailer rather for it. It looks like it consumes up to 200 stamina depending on how far you go with it, but you're essentially going to hold W and space, or just space after using Markethan's Wings in Awakening, and then you can hold space after Dragon Walk or Refraction in Awakening, or one of the side during the skill for evasive maneuvers, and then you press back during the skill to land, so when you actually stop it. So it looks like you can control exactly how far you want to go with it and how much that stamina consumption is going to be when you use it. Okay, moving on to the next parts. This is a little different than what we've seen for Awakenings because we have these two legacy forms, Hexblood and Dragon Blood, so you'll see that the skills have different flows based on the form. Obviously, they have different effects on each one, so we'll kind of just go through the, I believe this is the Hexblood first, and then we'll check out the Dragon Blood version of these attacks as well, because they are rather different. Notably, there's not one protection in the Hexblood form on it, so you'll kind of see it's got more CC options, and you see a lot of protection in the Dragon Blood forms. Of course, having your bond skills is going to change that a little bit. So first up, we see Tip of the Scale at max level here, Shift LMB. It's got 25% crit rate on it. Looks like this can be used during cooldown as well. The crit rate only applies on cooldown. 5% accuracy modifier. It's got 40 HP recovery per hit. Does boost all accuracy. You'll also see in the Dragon Blood form we do have an evasion minus 9%. So along with most of these having around 5 to 10 accuracy modifier, you do have a plus 9% accuracy rate in Awakening. Of course, she has that access in Succession as well. You'll have that, and you'll also have minus 9% evasion, so you can potentially increase your hit rate by 18% just off the skills alone. Not all classes have access to things like that. Does have a stiffness on the first hit, and then a KD on attack on the other 3 hits. So that's actually pretty interesting, because that stiffness won't quite hit your CC limit if you manage to land a CC. Off the top of my head, looking at this because of the KD, I imagine this is probably your secondary skill you're going to follow up with. Why? Because KDs, of course, you can't V, making this really, really important, especially in something like Arena, or you're just having some 1v1 setups or what have you, and you don't want them to V away. Scoring that KD is going to be pretty important. Then we see Savage Decree, which has a flow in the Hexblood form. It does not in the Dragonblood form. It's got a float on it, some pretty nice damage there. Across, and then it flows into even more damage on it, an 8% accuracy rate, and then that one's got a crit rate, 50% modifier on with a float available on the flow as well, so you could potentially float into float on that. Next up, we've got Spiteful Soul here, which has a flow in Dragonblood form, but not in this one. We've got 5% accuracy rate on it, another HP recovery on it, and this one has an AP buff on it, 16 AP for 10 seconds, which is nullified during the cooldown. Notably, the cooldown's only 4 seconds, so you're going to have 100% uptime on that. Same thing with the accuracy, and the evasion one is also 100% uptime, I believe. Yes, 3-second cooldown on the evasion debuff, 4-second cooldown on a 10-second accuracy buff, and 4-second cooldown on a 16 AP buff as well. We did see something like this in Succession. It originally had 20 AP for a buff, and that was later nerfed down to 10. So we'll see how this one holds up, especially on that 100% uptime. And it does say when using the skill and not on hits, so you don't actually have to land the hit either. You can pre-buff this before engaging, or maybe in a combo, something like that. We've got Aerial Burst 3 in this version in Hexblood. Does have a flow to go along with it. This one's got a minus 20 DP set up on it. It's 8% accuracy rate. It's got push the target on hits in PvE, a stun in PvP only, and then a knockdown on the next 2 hits. So that may be a little tricky to land since we've got double the CCs. Maybe just jump right into it if it's enough damage, but I gotta say on those modifiers compared to some of her other ones, doesn't look like it at a glance. Obviously, time will tell. You get an additional DP reduction, so it's essentially just gonna reset that debuff. It's a 10% accuracy rate on the flow for that, which is called Ascension. Moving over to Sundering Roar, this was one of the skills we saw showcased in the trailer, where the Dragonblood version, this is, I believe, is the one that shoots out the dragon's head with the fire and stuff. So this is the Hexblood version that we've got here. It's a 100% crit rate on it. It's got an 8% accuracy modifier. It is a stun on that skill, and in Hexblood, both versions have a flow. In Hexblood, the flow is going to give us a pretty massive damage, 1602 times 6 here, 8% accuracy modifier. It's got a burn effect on it as well, and that's a down attack. Then we've got Tectonic Slam, which is potentially the BSR skill to be used here when it's not a BSR. However, the damage is actually not super amazing compared to her others. It does have 25% crit rate, which could kind of lead to why the damage is where it's at. It does recover WP on that. It's got a float on the last hit for it. And then, of course, the BSR version is a super armor. It stuns on the first hit, floats on the second hits, and a knockdown on the last hits. I don't know how you're landing all 3 of these CCs with a CC limit, but I don't know, maybe the mobs are going to get wrecked. Obviously, massive damage here. It's a BSR, exactly what we expect. We do have a 100% crit rate on this. It's a 10% accuracy modifier, and notably gives you a plus 30 AP boost on that as well. So keep in mind, since that's that plus attack speed, that's going to be your Z buff, stacking up with the actual skill usage, since we've had modifications to how the Z buff works now. You don't have to choose one or the other. You're going to get both. We've got Crackling Flame, just F skill here. It's just a standard pressing F, low accuracy rate modifier, 100% crit rate. It's kind of whatever. Recovering WP. It does give you a critical hit rate plus 12% buff. That's extremely good, and I can see, especially in PvE, you're probably going to run something like this along with, I cannot remember the name of it off of the top of my head, Death Blow, I believe it's called, the Lightstone set, where you can pick up, is it 14% additional critical hit rate as well. It's Blade, Predation, gives you 10 monster AP and like 14% critical hit rate, something along those lines. So a lot of these skills that are in the 25s, 50s, and that sort of thing, between this skill, running max crit, of course, and having all your buffs up, you could potentially get to 100% crit rate on almost all of these skills across the board. So that'll be definitely something to consider in PvE anyways. And then lastly, we have Storm Piercer on here. This one is yet another pre-buff skill. If you're not used to seeing these yet, this is a 10% attack speed. It's on a 4-second cooldown, so once again, you'll be able to keep this up 100% of the time. It does have another recovery on it, same 40 HP per hit. On this one, it is a knockdown in any sense, not PvP or PvE only, and this one actually has really solid damage too. Super low cooldown for these pre-buffs. It's going to be interesting to work out the combos here. It might be slightly annoying because it does seem like you're going to want access to, obviously, your crit rate, your attack speed. You're going to want your AP. You may need the accuracy or evasion debuff depending on where you're grinding. And, of course, fighting, you'll want to pick those up if you can, if you're fighting an actual player. But these are unprotected, so you got to be a little careful with what you're doing. All right, moving into the Dragonblood form. Now let's take a look at some protections here and see what we're kind of working with here. So this version of Tip of the Scale, you'll see the damages are dialed down just a little bit compared to the Hexblood versions, but that's because there's protection on these skills, which makes a lot of sense. We've got a super armor on this, only 5% accuracy modifier here. The damage is okay. Critical hit rate plus 50%, but again, with all of these available buffs to you in that pre-buff, 50% critical hit rate is going to be 100% critical hit rate if you are buffed correctly, and you have that crackling flame buff as well, transitioning from Hexblood into this. We'll have to see how that goes. We don't have any flow on tip of the scale in this version. Then we've got Savage Decree here. It is also a DP minus 20, which we saw in the other one. It did have a flow and did quite a bit more damage between the flow and the regular skill in Hexblood. This one does have down smash available on it, but you can still pick up that that minus 20 DP if you're trying to get it in the Dragonblood form. Next up, we've got Spiteful Soul. This is a super armor. It floats in PvE. It's a 50% crit rate as well, 7% accuracy rate. On that, it's got air attack and down attack modifiers to it. It does have a flow to it as well called Cloud Strife here. It's a super armor as well and a down attack, 100% critical hit rate on that one. That's going to hit pretty hard for sure. 1503 times 8 with 100% crit rate is no joke for sure. Storm Piercer Dragonblood version, we've got forward guard on this and a PvE stun on the first hit for it. Damage isn't anything wild, but again, critical hit rate at 60% means virtually 100%. In most cases. Sundering Roar, this is the dragon head skill that we saw, which looks really cool. It's a super armor into a forward guard during the skill, and here's the big thing on it. They have it's casting and attack speed debuff 15% added into this class as well. No movement speed on it, thankfully, but yeah, that's going to be quite a skill for sure. Those are nice debuffs. The damage is kind of whatever at first look, but you've got 805 times 1 max 50 hits, and it's 100% critical hit rate, and of course protected there. Depending on how long that animation is, though, you may be vulnerable to someone getting behind your forward guard pretty easily. We'll have to see how that plays out. It does have a flow to go along with it, because why not? We've got 100% critical hit rate on this, 1562 times 6. This is going to be hitting pretty hard for sure on 100% crit rate there, 10% accuracy modifier, and it's going to put a 60 pain damage every 3 seconds for 9 seconds on hits, so a nice little bleed-esque type item there. Super armor on this skill as well, because almost everything in Dragonblood form is protected. Doombreaker is our version of the BSR in Dragonblood form here. So we can see the skill itself is actually pretty solid, unlike the Tectonic Slam, which wasn't super impressive except for the BSR version. So in this one, the damage is pretty good, 100% crit rate on this one, not the BSR version needed. It's super armor into iframe into super armor. Effects during the skill while it's using. It's got a float in PvE, down smash. Otherwise, stamina does not recover while skill's in use, so keep that in mind. And then the BSR version is massive amounts of damage across the board, especially that last attack, 100% crit rate as well. A little better accuracy modifier at 15%, and then you're going to pick up 50 AP off your Z buff here and 40% attack speed. It's going to make you pretty insane. Invincible on airborne, and then super armor. It stuns, floats, and knockdown on the last hit for it. I can't wait to see this skill because it probably looks absolutely insane. So definitely looking forward to that. Crackling Flame in our Dragonblood version does recover WP as opposed to the HP recovery we saw in the Hexblood setup. This is the evasion rate debuff that we saw. It does have air attack and down attack on it as well. Nothing super crazy as far as the skill. It's just an F skill, but it does have that evasion debuff that may be important to you. And again, the F skill over here having the critical hit rate boost in Hexblood. And then the Tectonic Slam, which was BSR 100%. Set up here in the Dragonblood form, we have not super impressive damage on the regular skill for it. Comparatively to everything else, it does have a 60% critical hit rate, which, as I've said several times, can easily be a 100% crit rate. It's got forward guard on it, knockback in PvE only, and then of course our BSR version got 30 AP and 25% attack speed per the Z buff effect. Of course, much lighter damage obviously than the 200% skill, and the same stun, floating, and knockdown on it is super armor only. Along with it, looks like just throughout the duration of the skill, as it doesn't specify otherwise for it. So it does have a down smash there as well. So pretty cool. It looks kind of, I actually assumed the Dragonblood form was going to be the heavier damage output. It's actually the tankier type option as far as protections go. A lot of super armors in this kit around the board, a couple of forward guards for it, and no iframe directly from here, but of course you still have options in your pre-awakening for it. As far as your core skills, your bond skills, if you will, it looks like, as I checked through these, it looks like the options are only in Hexblood form, and each of these options add protection to specific skills. None of these add a CC to the already protected skills, which is kind of interesting, and the fact that it's all only Hexblood. Again, this may be a little bit different when it actually comes out, but that's what we're seeing here. So you can add forward guard to tip of the scale. You can put a forward guard on Spiteful Soul. Sundering Roar can get super armor, which is probably going to be pretty likely a good choice here. You can put super armor on aerial burst. You can also get super armor on tectonic slam or forward guard on savage decree. Your choice there. Obviously, we'll have to play with that and kind of see once we actually get our hands on the release of Drakania. So there you go, a little bit of insight into what kind of skills we're looking at. I know the big question was, what about a grab? Well, now you know, you've got that little bit of information a bit early, so hopefully that helped you out. Again, the link to this, if you want to check out the skills yourself, it's in the description down below. We got one more week to go till we get the release of Drakania Awakening, and we can check this out, but I'm pretty excited to give it a whirl and try it out. It's always fun trying new classes, but this one definitely looks like a lot of fun playing it. It's really interesting to me, the two forms. Hopefully it's not like too cumbersome, and it actually like plays really smoothly and feels really good, but only time will tell there. Let me know what you guys think about the skills that they've got listed here in the comments down below. If you did enjoy the video, be sure to like it. If you are new to the channel, be sure to subscribe so you get notifications when new videos go live. And if you'd like to catch me playing live, there's a link to my Twitch page in the description down below. You can jump on over there, drop a follow so you get notifications for that as well. With that said, that's going to be it for this one. I want to thank everybody for watching, and I will see you next time.